Hi everyone, welcome back to my YouTube. Today's video is going to be a walkthrough of how I made the sweater from my mom using this little guy right here to punch holes into the sleeves. And then I took a pattern or a stitch from this book here and adapted it to make sleeves. This book is by Sarah Hazel. It's super nice to have on hand to get inspiration from and try different stitches out. I primarily make plushies, so it's nice to be able to look through here and try and incorporate them into some plushie patterns, or if you wanted to make your own blanket, tons of super unique, awesome stitches. I got tired of, doing single crochet all the time, so I wanted to have some different stitches to incorporate into my pattern, and I'm continuing to try and do so. So you'll need one of these or something to punch holes into your garment. This is, I can just show you here. You just boom and you make a little hole here. I will show you. I have a piece of me doing it in the video, but just thought I would show you. It creates a little hole here. I liked having this tool because it basically made all the holes the same size, and depending on what type of yarn you can use, there's different size holes. I will have this and the book linked in the description if you want to pick up your own. This was about 10 bucks, so really inexpensive, and it makes it super easy to put the holes in the garment without having to like stab with something sharp and hurt yourself. So I did what is called the iris stitch that I learned from this book here, and I made sleeves. And in my pattern, I did some tapering of the sleeve to match the sleeve that I cut off. I didn't want the whole sleeve the same size because I felt like it would be too big. It was not for me, so it's hard for me to truly know whether the taper was truly needed, if it made much of a difference. I do like the way it ended up looking, but if you want to try a different stitch within the sweatshirt, you could totally do that, because you're going to have holes and you can do basically whatever you want. You could do like a granny stitch. If you're doing a random stitch, you're just going to have to experiment if you want to taper your sleeves, and kind of, you can see how I did it and maybe try and do it something similar. If you're doing like a granny cluster or something like that, you could probably do some like crochet or some decrease 3 together or whatnot. I don't know. I haven't done it, so I have to experiment. But anyhow, that is basically everything you need. You need one of these and you need some yarn, and I used a 5mm hook. So you will need both of those and your sweatshirt. I used just a basic Gildan sweatshirt that you can get from a hobby or craft store. You can order one from Amazon. You can get a fancy sweater from Walmart. Walmart has some really cute ones. I plan on getting one of those so I want to try and make a pocket as well for one of mine. But yeah, so I plan on having another tutorial eventually in the future, making one for myself, and I'm going to try a different pattern for the sleeves. I'm going to do something different than the one I made for my mom. But anyhow, let's get to it. I am going to make this a quicker tutorial video. I know I have the breakdown in another video of kind of what I did, but this is a little bit quicker. This is the same shirt. I'm recording this at the same time. So I have my shirt and I decided to screen print on it. You can use whatever kind of sweatshirt you want. But here is the seam, and I'm going to cut off about 1 inch over from the seam on the sleeve side to leave enough room on either side of the seam, and to make sure that I can put the hole a little bit like in the middle without having to worry about the seam peeling on either side. So we have our sweatshirt. You will need a leather hole punch tool. I will have everything I used link below, but this is what I used. It was on Amazon. I think it was like 10 bucks, not expensive at all. And it basically just gives you, different size holes, and that way they'll be all uniform. I probably am going to use the smallest one that I'm looking at here, because I'm going to use acrylic yarn, but if you're going to use like a thicker yarn, then you can always do a bigger hole. Start right here, because this is where the seam is for the actual sleeve. Up here we have a smooth edge, so it doesn't really matter. And since we're chaining 3 in between each one to get this stitch pattern, then it really doesn't matter how many holes you have. You just want them spaced out at a decent amount. And even if you don't have a tape measure, I think if you eyeball it, you'll be fine. You just don't want them too close because you don't want it to stretch. So from the seam, let's do about 3/4. So I'm gonna go, and I'm gonna do about midway in between here. Okay, here we go, no turning back. And I think I'm just gonna eyeball it, you know? Okay. It was clicking earlier, I don't know why it didn't click, so. Okay, so this is editing Emily. I realized that I didn't actually vocalize how far I did apart the holes. I am editing it to put it on the screen in this clip here, but I would do it at least a 1/2 inch to 0.75 inch apart. You can do about 1 inch apart. You're just gonna have to chain a little bit more loosely so your sleeve does not like bow in. And also, if you can do multiples of 5, if possible. I did 20, I think I had 21 holes, and it made it a little bit awkward when I started doing the decreases. So if you're gonna follow how I did the sleeves, I would recommend doing a multiples of 5 if possible. If not, it's not a huge deal because I ended up just working around it and I explained how to do that in the video. But if possible, if you could do it about in multiples of 5, it'll make it go a little bit smoother when you go to decrease and taper down the sleeves. So make the holes about a 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch apart, and then put it about in the middle of the little bit of sleeve you have left before the seam, and you'll be able to see that on the clip. And sorry, the lighting in here is very poor. Let's get you zoomed in a little bit now. There we go. And honestly, this is an experiment, so we will see how it holds up. I plan on making myself one next. Okay, so I have cut all my holes here, and I did end up doing one over here because I was gonna have a huge gap. So I think hopefully we'll be okay. And the pull of the yarn is going to be spread out through all the holes. So hopefully it will not, you know, put too much pressure on one hole individually. So, all right, let's get our yarn going. Okay, for this next part, I was too lazy to get off the couch, so I apologize, but this is also in the wrong angle. But you're going to put a slip stitch on your hook, and you're going to go into your first hole. I chose to go on the seam of the shirt, so that way you wouldn't be able to see where I kind of did my transitions. You're going to do 2 single crochets into the first hole, and then you're going to chain 2 to get over to the next hole, and then you're going to do 2 single crochets into the next hole. And you're going to continue to do that all the way around. And I will show you what you're supposed to do whenever you get all the way around, but here is just me doing more 2 single crochets, chain 2, 2 single crochets, and this is kind of our base. I ended up changing what I originally had planned. That was just due to stability, and I actually did each sleeve different. But I thought it would be more stable if we did 2 single crochets in the hole versus the one I had originally planned. So here is at a better angle for YouTube. I apologize about being lazy and not wanting to get off the couch. But just continue all the way around, and then I will meet you back and we will finish this round and get the sleeve going. Okay, now that we have done 2 single crochet and 2 chains between every hole here. We're going to do 2 more chains. So I had one already, that's 2 chains, and then we're going to slip stitch into this first stitch, and this is where we did that slip stitch on our hook to begin with. And then we are going to chain 2, 1, 2, and this is going to be the beginning of our iris stitch. So into the same hole here, we're going to do a double crochet. We're going to chain 1 and then do 2 more double crochet, all in the same stitch. And then after that, we're going to skip 3 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, and then so it'll be this first single crochet that we made into the hole. So two double crochet, chain 1, 2 double crochet. Then we're going to skip 3 again. So 1, 2, 3. And it's always going to be this first stitch in your joining round, from your joining round. So the first single crochet in each hole. And then you continue going around, 2 double crochet, chain 1, 2 double crochet. And then when you come back to the beginning, you will slip stitch into your chain 2 and then slip stitch over to the chain 1 spot and begin again with a chain 2. And I will show you what that looks like. Okay, so I just did my last iris stitch, and here is my beginning one. I'm going to slip stitch into this chain 2, and it looks like mine's very tight for some reason, but I'm going to still get in there and slip stitch. And then we're going to slip stitch over into the chain 1 space. And I just thought it looked neater this way. So this is how I've been doing it. So chain 2, and then you're going to start your iris stitch back in here using the chain 1 as one of your beginning double crochets. And then you just keep doing that, and you're going to do another iris stitch in the chain 1 space all the way around. So you're basically stacking them on top of each other, so they should all line up here and be on top of each other. And I did this for 7 rows, and then I kind of did a decreased row. So do 7 and then come back. Oops, we need one more here. Come back and check in, and I'll show you how I did the decrease if you want to do that. If you want your sleeve all the same size, then totally skip this section, or the next section I should say. Okay, so we have done our 7 rounds, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and we have slip stitched to the top of the first iris stitch, and we're going to slip stitch over to our hole here, or our chain 1 space, and we're going to do 4 of the iris stitch, and then we are going to just slip stitch into the top of the 5th stitch. And I'll show you what that looks like. So that was 1. This is 2. This is 3. This is 4. Oops, one more stitch. And then on the 5th stitch, you're just going to slip stitch, and don't do this too tight. Do it kind of loose into the top of that 5th one, and you're basically skipping it and going on to the 6th one. So every 5th stitch, just slip stitch into the top, and that's if you want your sleeve to decrease. And let me get the camera set up in a better view, and I will show you what the other sleeve looks like. Okay, so here is the first sleeve I made, and you can see that it kind of starts to decrease and tapers and gets smaller. And if you want your sleeve to do that, go ahead and follow the instructions I just gave you. It does leave a little bit of a crease from that iris stitch we skipped for the previous round, and then it obviously takes away your perfect rows because you're taking one away in multiple spots throughout the sleeves. But overall, looking at the sleeve, I think it still looks pretty good. If you want to keep your sleeve the same size, you can do that. I just thought it was too poofy for me, but it's also hard to tell because this is not for me. So if you can try your own sleeve on and you like the way it looks, go ahead and continue doing so. But when you put, this is like where we skipped one. It kind of makes a little poof, but when you're wearing it, it's not too, you can't tell too much, but you can see this is where we skipped it. So this little bit will poof out. And if you do your stitch loose enough, it won't poof out too much. Okay, so back to the sleeve here. So we did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we did our slip stitch, and that counts as our decrease. And I continue to do that all the way around. I do have 21 total iris stitches, so I ended up with one extra, and I just did an iris stitch in that and didn't worry about it being slightly uneven. If you have, I don't know, let's say 23 stitches, or I don't know, 18, I would just kind of evenly spread out as best as you can, like do 5 and then I would do 6. I wouldn't do any smaller than 5 or 6 in between, unless you want a more drastic taper of your sleeve. So I feel like mine looks pretty gradual, so I'm going to continue to do it that way. But if you have an odd number, not an increment of 5, then I would just spread them out as best as you can, doing 5 or 6, or even 5 and 4 between each decrease, as we'll call it. That's the slip stitch. So continue to do that all the way around, and I will show you what to do once you get to this decrease stitch. But basically you're just going to skip right over it. So you're going to go from this one and then skip this and then go right to this one. So you're basically eliminating this stitch here, but I will show you what that looks like. Okay, so I have done my full round with the slip stitches every 5th stitch, and as you can see right here, I did my slip stitch right here, and then I just had one iris stitch before the new round, so that's okay. And then now I did my 4 iris stitches, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I'm going to skip over this slip stitch here and begin the iris stitch here. And you can do this first one pretty loose if you can, and you just continue that all the way around. But you can see it leaves a little bit of a bigger gap, but once you get going, you're not really going to be able to tell because we are taking away this iris stitch. And you're going to do that again, just skip over these. Now I did this for, I believe, 4 rounds here. 1, 2, 3. I did 3 rounds, and then I did another round with decreases. So do 3 more rounds, or 2 more after the one you've already started, and then meet me back here. Okay, so I have done my 3 rows after the decreased row. So we have a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And now on the 12th row here, I am going to do 3 of the iris stitches, and then I'm going to do a slip stitch into the 4th one here and follow that around. And I believe I have 17, so I'm off again. So I'm just going to do like I did previously and just do the extra stitch here and forget about it. So continue that all the way around, and then once again you're going to skip over this slip stitch you did here and to slowly decrease your size. And if you want more room between the decreases, like if you want more than 3 rows here, go ahead and add a couple more rows, then do another decrease row, or you don't have to add another decrease row at all. So after we've done this all the way around, do your round like we did previously, where you just skipped over this slip stitch here and went from here to here. And then that was the last decrease row I did. I didn't do any more decreases, and I did 14 after this decrease row for the length of my sleeve, you're going to want to measure how long your arms are. So you're going to want to try it on and make sure it's long enough. You will have a cuff, and I believe the cuff is about 1.5 inches long, maybe about 2 inches, and you can make the cuff longer or shorter. So mine is probably about 2 inches or so. So you have that little bit of space, but I liked the jacket to have, or the sleeve to have a little bit of drape. So I went a little bit longer, and then when I put the cuff on, the sleeve will kind of have a little bag to it and it'll drape, and it's not just pulled all the way straight. So make the sleeve as long as you want, keeping in mind that you have a cuff that'll be about 1.5 to 2 inches long. Okay, so I have made my sleeve the desired length here, and you can see, it's hard to see because we're zoomed in, but we have our taper here. Oops, I am managing to pull it out. I looped it through my keyboard. So after we do our last iris stitch here, I gotta redo it. I pulled mine out. Okay, I'm going to slip stitch into this chain 2 like we've been doing. I'm gonna chain 1, and then we're going to decrease, single crochet decrease. So you're going back into that chain 2. The first one's a little confusing. So single crochet decrease, and then where that chain 1 space is, you're going to single crochet. And then you're going to decrease again. And I'm just going through each double crochet, pulling up a loop, pulling up a loop, and then going through all 3. That's just how I decided to do my decrease on this. That's not how I normally do it, because I normally do amigurumi or amigurumi plushies, whatever, and I do invisible decreases. So this is not how I normally do mine, but this is closed, so it doesn't really matter. You won't be able to see it. So in the double crochets, you're making a decrease, so however you want to do that. And then in the chain 1 space, you're doing a single crochet, and then you're doing a decrease on the double crochets. So continue to do that all the way around, and this is where we're going to start tapering in to make that cuff. Okay, now that you've made it all the way around, you should have a nice, basically a clean edge we can start making the cuff in. It may look a little bit smaller, but it shouldn't really look like much tapered in yet. And we're going to slip stitch into that chain 1. Or, I mean, you can even go into this first decrease space. So now we're going to chain 1. We're going to do a half double crochet, and then we're going to do a half double crochet decrease. So however you want to do the decrease. I honestly don't remember how I did mine on the other cuff, if I did an invisible one or not. Okay, so I just checked the other sleeve. It looked like I did how I did the single crochets. So I think that's a better idea, just because this is clothing, so it's going to have a little bit more pull. So I'm going through both loops versus just a front loop like you do for amigurumi. So half double crochet and then half double crochet decrease. So half double crochet and continue that all the way around, and this should really make the taper here. I just did that one a little different. I was just saying, I feel like that's kind of how I do plushies. I honestly don't know what's gonna work best. This is just a tutorial on how I did it. And without long-term use, you don't know. It's not gonna make much of a difference on how I did the sleeves, because you're not really gonna see this stitch anyways. And this one's just a little bit easier to do because we're going to do front and back post stitches on the next round. So we are going to, these are going to get covered up for the most part. So continue all the way around and meet you back here. Okay, so I now have 26 stitches, and the next part is pretty crucial if you have to have an even number, because we're going to be alternating, and to get the ribbing effect evenly, you're going to want to have an even number here. So if you're off, I would just suggest skipping a decrease or adding one to get that number, whichever you prefer. If you want your sleeve a little tighter, it's going to get tighter after this, but once again, just slip stitch to that chain 1 space, chain 2, and we're going to do front and back post double crochet, and that'll give it some taper and allow it to stretch. So to start, it won't really matter, just pick one and stick with one. I'm going to do a front post. So we are going from the front under your half double post here and through the other side, and then you do your double crochet as normal. And then the next time we're going to alternate, so we're going to do a back post. We're going to go from the back, put your hook through the back, over your post, through the other side, double crochet like normal. Try to make sure I'm getting close enough for you. So now we're going to go front. You go from the front to the back, under your post, through, double crochet. So just continue to alternate that around, and it should alternate and start giving a rib effect. So next time we're going from the back, over the post, through the other side. And as you can see, you're creating the rib effect here. It's kind of hard to see with my variegated yarn, but if you end up having two that are the same in a row, just pull it out and redo it. Unless you want to like double up, do two one way and then two the other way. You could do that too. It'll probably give it a cool little pattern. But continue doing that all the way around and I'll meet you back. Okay, so I have made it all the way around, and I'm going to slip stitch in the second chain from our chain 2, and I'm going to chain 2 again, and I'm going to do the same thing. So whatever way you started with, continue that way, and you're going to go around that double crochet this time. And it should match the previous row and create a line here. And you can continue to do this until the cuff is as long as you would like it. I did mine, I didn't measure, but probably about 2 inches or so. And then at the end, I did a light slip stitch all the way around, just to, I actually don't know. Okay, so after I made it the length that I wanted for my last row, I did a row of single crochet post stitches, and I just did that because it's not quite as stretchy, and to hopefully give it a nice hold on the cuff without it stretching out. So here is the finished cuff here. There we go. And then I just did 1 row of single crochet here. So here's my finger. It's probably about 2 inches or so. And then just fasten off and tie off your ends and repeat for the second sleeve and you'll be done. And obviously you'll want to make sure you do the same amount of holes in the very beginning as you did on the other side for here, so you can lay it on top of each other and try and match up the stitches, or just count the amount you did and just wing it like I did.